Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Million Pound Mission Podcast. It's your buddy Adam, the PhD, the previously heavy dude, and this is episode number 232, Applying the 4 Tendencies for Weight Loss Success with Gretchen Rubin. Now, I am fired up about this one. I love Gretchen's stuff. I'm totally into her world of information. I love her books. I talk about her stuff all the time on the show. As you guys know, in my coaching sessions, I'm always applying her principles and things like the 4 tendencies and talk about habits and willpower. So this was a big damn deal for me. I worked hard to get this interview. I got some connections and we made it happen. And I really, really enjoyed it. Now, if you guys get something out of this interview, it would mean a lot to me. Like, I really want to blast this out there because I feel like we crushed it, mainly Gretchen, and I facilitated. But if you guys can help share this one out, it would mean a ton to me, especially hit me up on Instagram. Let me know what you thought. Share it out in your Instagram story. Tag me at Million Pound Mission. But let's spread this one out there because I feel like Gretchen really just over-delivered with the value, and we had a great time along the way. So help me share it out. Let's spread the word of this episode. And I just think that the world needs to hear it. All right. Now, I know that some of you may be like, Gretchen Rubin, never heard of that person. And I've only known about her for the last year and a half, 2 years. So she is a big name in the influencer space. But in case you aren't familiar with her, let's talk a little bit about Gretchen Rubin. Now, she is one of the most influential writers on the linked subjects of habits, happiness, and human nature. She's the author of many books, including the blockbuster New York Times bestseller, Better Than Before, and The Happiness Project. Better Than Before, I've talked about it in the show quite a bit. Her books have sold more than 3.5 million copies worldwide in more than 35 languages. And her popular daily blog at GretchenRubin.com reports on her adventures in pursuit of habits and happiness. Now, she's also an award-winning podcaster with Happier with Gretchen Rubin, which is an amazing show. I highly recommend you hit the subscribe button on that one. Now, I want you to follow along as Gretchen and we dive into things like how our habits impact our willpower and our ability to defeat the evil donut bringer at work, which I borrowed that term from her podcast. If you guys listen to that one, you'll know that. But we also talk about how to use the treat jar concept to boost our weekend willpower. We talk about how to figure out which of her 4 tendencies fits you and how to use that knowledge in your weight loss game plan. Super interesting, super useful there. And then we also talk about how outer order can be achieved through decluttering so that we can reach a place of inner calm. This is high value, one of my favorite hours spent in the podcasting multiverse. I'm not going to delay you anymore. I'm not going to gush over this one anymore. I'm really happy with the way it came out. And again, if you guys can help me share it out, much appreciated. Now, without any further delay, here's episode number 232. Applying the 4 Tendencies for Weight Loss Success with Gretchen Rubin. All right, Gretchen, welcome to the Million Pound Mission Podcast. How are we doing today, my friend?
Great. I'm so happy to be talking to you.
Well, I just mentioned to you that you are the most requested guest that I've ever had in the history of the show. I've been doing this for almost 4 years now, so I'm so excited that we got connected, and I'm excited to kind of merge our energies in the direction of helping our audience here today.
Yeah, I know we're interested in so many of the same subjects, so this will be so much fun.
Awesome. So I kind of want to dive right in because I know that there's so many questions that I want to ask you, but I want to start with curiosity. And in your latest book, you got a nice endorsement from Brene Brown, which is awesome. And she says that curiosity is your superpower, which I love that phrase. So one of the most impactful books that I've read of yours was Better Than Before. So I want to understand a little bit of the background of what curiosity led you down that path of writing that book.
Well, it was really interesting because I was looking for a book. I was trying, my sister Elizabeth, who's the co-host of the Happier podcast with me, says that I can sometimes be a happiness bully because if I see there's an opportunity for you to get happier, I can get a little insistent about that. And my mother is somebody who at some times in her life has been good at consistently exercising. And then at other times she hasn't been. And so because I do study happiness and sort of how do we achieve our aims for ourselves, I became very interested in habits and how can we make or break the habits that would contribute to our happiness. And so I was looking for a book that would explain to me, like, what are all the things my mother could do or that I could try to nudge my mother to do to try to help her keep the habit of exercising. And there's tons of fascinating books about habits and willpower and self-control and everything, but none of them really were like, how do you do it? And a lot of times they would say things which I was clearly like, that's just not true. Like, it's 30 days to form a habit. I'm like, have you met people? Because if you have a donut 3 times on the way to work, that's a habit right away. And then there's other things that never kind of stick. And why is that? So I was looking for a book and looking for a book and looking for a book. And finally I was like, does this book not exist that just tells you, like, what are all the strategies that people use to make or break habits? Because I know just from what I've thought about myself, there's a lot of them, and some work for some people and some work for others. But where is the catalog of this so that you could pick and choose? And then I thought, well, that book doesn't exist. I guess I better write that book. And then immediately I was like, oh my gosh, this is the book that I cannot wait to write, which is, what are all the strategies that people can use to make or break our habits? Because it turns out there's a lot of them. And so when you know all of them, you can sort of make your own little tasting menu of the ones that work for you.
Yeah. Can you touch on the relationship between habits, decisions, and willpower? Because that was like one of the biggest takeaways. I actually did a podcast episode a couple episodes ago talking about this, kind of reviewing those thoughts that you put out there. But I'd like to hear from the Jedi master herself here.
Well, I mean, that cluster of things is so important to kind of think through. So habits. The thing that is energizing and freeing about habits is that when something's a habit, we don't have to make decisions. We don't have to use willpower or self-control because that behavior is on automatic. I'm not deciding whether to brush my teeth. I'm not having thoughts like, I've been so good brushing my teeth the last month, I think I deserve a day off. Or starting next week, I'm going to be so good with brushing my teeth. Why should I bother to start now? Or I brushed my teeth, so I think I should get a chocolate chip cookie. You just do it. And this is important because there is decision fatigue. Making decisions, no matter how small, does wear us out. And this is why you hear about people like President Obama or Steve Jobs wearing the same clothes all the time. Because it's like even a little decision like that just takes something out of us. So the more that we can take away decisions, I don't decide to go for a morning walk. I go every day. It's just a habit. If I can go, I go. And so I don't have that decision. And because I don't have to make a decision, I don't have to use my self-control or my willpower because I'm not having the question like, okay, I can do this. Am I going to make myself do this? It just happens without needing to put that focus on it. Now, here's something that was fascinating to me as I did the research. When they were looking at people who had really, really good habits in their lives, what they expected that they would find is that these people were using tremendous amounts of self-control and willpower. What they found is they weren't. They weren't using self-control and willpower very much. And so when they had something where they needed to use their self-control or willpower, they had a lot of reserves because they weren't using this. So how were they sticking to all these good habits if they weren't using self-control and willpower? Well, because they were habits. They didn't have to use willpower on that. They could save it for kind of unusual things because everything else was just on automatic pilot. So it didn't drain them. They were just like, oh, I'm just doing this, just doing that. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I feel like this is a huge concept, especially in my field here with this podcast, with helping people get healthy through achieving a healthy body weight, where people are walking into the day and they're like, okay, am I going to exercise today? Yeah. Well, maybe I will. What kind of exercise am I going to do? Where am I going to go?
Yeah.
Who am I going to go with? Okay, now what am I going to eat? What diet am I following today?
Yeah.
All these questions and that decision fatigue, that muscle, it's like we can only do so many push-ups in a row until we get tired. And that decision fatigue is the same way. And then the willpower gets depleted. And all of a sudden we're making really, really bad decisions. So I wanted to there's a specific situation that I wanted to throw at you that a lot of people struggle with. They're driving the struggle bus a bit on this topic. And I wanted to have you look at it through your lens as a willpower and habit expert. So the example is I deal with a lot of people that, are in a workplace where they are constantly forced with what you refer to as the evil donut bringer.
Yes.
That person, or that maybe they're a medical professional and that drug rep is coming and they're trying to woo them with pizza and treats and things like that. But there's the snack table where people are always bringing things in. But a lot of my clients, or a lot of people that listen to the show, they do really, really good all week long. They say, no. But then they get home and on the weekend it turns into a one-way ticket to Cheat Fest 2019. And that a lot of people just don't get it. Like, why? How am I able to resist all that temptation during the week? Then I get home and all of a sudden I'm sitting there ordering pizza, and it's kind of binge fest on the weekend. So how would you analyze that situation?
Well, there's a lot of things that could be going on. And what jumps to mind most immediately is loopholes. So they're in Better Than Before, I described 21 strategies that we can use to make or break our habits. And one of the strategies is called the strategy of loophole spotting. And this, I have to say, this was my favorite chapter to write because loopholes are hilarious. It is so funny, the loopholes that we come up with. So a loophole is when you have come up with a reason that should excuse you from sticking to whatever you've decided you're going to stick to. So in the situation, and there's 10 categories of loopholes. Most of us have a few favorites. Like my own favorite is false choice loophole, but there's many favorites. But I can imagine that a lot of people on the weekend, they're coming up with a loophole that is letting them feel in the moment like they're entitled not to follow whatever regimen that they've decided on for themselves. They're going to let themselves off the hook because of this loophole. So one of the loopholes might be moral licensing loophole. This is, I've been so good, therefore I deserve to be bad. Or, I deserve to break the rules. I was so good during the week that now on the weekends, it's I should be able to do this. That's one kind of loophole. Another kind of loophole is the fake self-actualization loophole. This is when it's dressed up in sort of some kind of like, I got to embrace life, man. So this is like, life's too short to not to have a piece of pizza. Or, if I don't have this dessert, I'm going to miss out forever. And so then that becomes a loophole. And here is the most dangerous loophole, the one coin loophole. And this is a loophole that's dangerous because it's almost always true. Okay, so the one coin loophole takes its name from an ancient teaching story called the parable of the growing heap. So in this parable, the question is, can one coin make a man rich? You would say no. But if you gave a man another coin, and then another coin, and then another coin, at some point you would have to say that a man is rich because one coin made him so. And the way that this is relevant to somebody eating on the weekends is you could say to yourself, I've been so good. What difference does it make if I have one brownie on Saturday? Like, what's one brownie? And what is one brownie? It's absolutely true that it's inconsequential. It's trivial to have one brownie, but that's because you're looking at one coin. But what you want is the growing heap. One brownie makes no difference, but a habit of eating healthfully is enormously desirable. And the only way you eat healthfully is sort of one coin by one coin by one coin, one brownie by one brownie by one brownie. And if you look at the brownie versus the lifetime of healthy eating, it looks different. And what happens is we often shift back and forth depending on what we want to let ourselves get away with. So during the week, you're like, oh, I'm so good. And then on the weekend, you're like, hey, what's one brownie? And so these are the kind of loopholes that people can invoke. And what happens is a lot of times when you are aware, a lot of times these are happening, I don't know about you, but like they're not even articulated. They're kind of running in the background and driving us without us even really consciously explaining to ourselves what our thought process is. A lot of times if you bring it into your consciousness and you're saying, oh, I see, I'm telling myself, I'm giving myself the false choice. I can either live a life of eating carrots and lettuce all the time, or I can have a life that's rich and abundant where I eat, delicious desserts. It's like, that's a false choice. Are those the only two choices? I don't think so. Once you've articulated that clearly, a lot of times it's easier to say, hey, I have more than two choices here. Or, hey, the fact that I eat healthy during the week doesn't mean I don't want to eat healthy on the weekend. I do want to eat healthy on the weekend. Or, this is just one brownie, but you know what? I can skip this brownie. I don't need this brownie. I can have another brownie tomorrow. I'm going to skip this brownie today or whatever. So a lot of times understanding the loopholes will help with that kind of pattern.
Yeah, and I love it's a pattern disrupt in my mind because when people are binge eating, a lot of it's emotional or it's instinctive and they aren't rationally thinking. So if they, check out your book and they learn about all these loopholes, just that one 60-second pause of thinking like, oh, this is the thing that Gretchen said. Then that allows them to think rationally where they've got a fighting chance at least versus like when I weighed 327 pounds, I would have food, I'd have half the pizza gone before I even really
Yes.
realized what was going on, and
Yes.
I was just instinctively getting after it. So
Yeah.
having that pause is huge.
Well, then there's also abstainers and moderators. And I don't know what you are, but so abstainers and moderators, that's a distinction having to do with how people most successfully resist a strong temptation. We can all be moderators with weak temptation. So this is about a strong temptation. Now, abstainers are people for whom it's easier to give up altogether. They do fine with none, or they go all the way. So like I have a tremendous sweet tooth, so I can have no Thin Mint cookies, or I can have like 11 Thin Mint cookies and want more and more and more. I can't have like one Thin Mint cookie. I haven't had half a dish of ice cream in my entire life. But I find it easy to have none. Like now I don't eat sugar. I am like one of these crazy low carb people that you read about because it's easier for me to just have none than to have a little bit. Now there are moderators. Moderators are people who get kind of panicky and rebellious if they're told they can have none, and they do better if they have it a little bit or they have it sometimes. So they're going to have a few French fries. They're going to have, these are the people that are like, just keep a bar of fine chocolate in your desk drawer and every day have one square of fine chocolate and that's all you need. I'm like, no, my whole day would be 1 square, 2 squares, 3 squares. It's my birthday. It's raining. Like I'm like, I might as well eat it at 7:30 a.m. because my whole day is going to be just, completely preoccupied with that bar of chocolate. But moderators do better with a little bit. And a lot of times we're a mix. Like I'm a moderator when it comes to something like wine. I can have half a glass of wine because I don't really care about wine. With sweets, it's like I'm like all in. And the only way I could really manage my sweet tooth was to give up sugar altogether. And the interesting thing about abstainers and moderators is they will often tell each other that they're doing it wrong. Like a lot of nutritionists are moderators, which makes sense if you think about it because they have like a healthy relationship with food. Right. And they'll say things like, follow the 80-20 rule, or don't be too hard on yourself. Don't demonize certain food. It's not healthy to like deny yourself something altogether. And I just was like, that's easier for me. Why is it wrong for me? Why do I have to eat a brownie just because I should? Like, it's easier for me to give it up altogether. But also when I say to moderators, why don't you just stick to the rules? Why don't you go cold turkey? It's like, that doesn't work for them. And so again, it's not that there's a right way and a wrong way. It's just some people do better in one way or another. And if you're struggling with one approach, you might try the other approach, because I know as an abstainer myself, it sounds so hard to abstain theoretically, but what my experience is, and so many abstainers have told me the same thing, it's actually easier. It's far easier to have none than to have a little bit. And you can just try it. And if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. But a lot of times I'm like, you can get yourself out of this whole noisy game by just not having it. And like the evil donut bringer, if you don't eat sugar, you don't care if the evil donut bringer brings in donuts. It doesn't matter to you because you don't have a donut. Not today, not tomorrow, not on your birthday, not when it's raining, not in a box, not with a fox. You don't eat the donut. And that's easier. And so that's just one thing I throw out for people to consider, because I think sometimes people are like, I can't do it, or I shouldn't do it. And I'm like, it's a strategy that works for many people. It might work for you. So it's something to think about. It can be easier.
Yep. Yeah, I went on a run during my weight loss journey where I did 1,000 days in a row with no sugar, no processed foods. And it was easy for me. Like the first couple of days, there's an adjustment, but that, like, once you get the momentum rolling in the right direction, it's easier to keep the momentum going than to reverse momentum with the transformation. So, and that was one of my favorite parts of the book, with the, that whole section, learning that, you do a great job of helping clarify situations that are very emotional and very confusing. So learning that I'm an abstainer, I'm like, this makes sense. Now, one other part of Better Than Before that I really like, it was a mind opener for me, because I never thought in these terms, is the treat jar concept, and building back the willpower, kind of replenishing the willpower. And I've been using this with my clients, and they really, really like it. So could you explain that really quick about kind of how we can fill up the kind of like the video game threshold when you're playing like old school Nintendo Contra and your life is depleting, and all of a sudden we got to fill it back up. How do we do that with our willpower?
Yeah, well, so of the 21 strategies, I have to say that the most popular strategy is the strategy of treats, which is the strategy you're talking about.
Yep.
And the strategy of treats is focused on exactly what you're saying, that we're like cell phones that need a charge. And when we seek that, we need that energy, we're going to get it some way. And a lot of times what we reach for is an unhealthy treat, like a brownie or
Yep.
impulse shopping or staying up too late, like binge watching old episodes of Game of Thrones or whatever it is. But you don't want to do something to make yourself feel better that's just in the end going to make you feel worse. And so you want to give yourself healthy treats. And the reason that treats are important is because when we give more to ourselves, we can ask more from ourselves. And so if I'm asking myself to like switch up my diet and do things that are different for me, or I'm asking myself to like get in the habit of going on a walk, and I'm still sort of working through that part. Or I'm trying to even like not use curse words or not lose my temper as much. I'm trying to use that self-mastery. One of the ways to make it easier is to give ourselves a charge with a healthy treat. And when we plan out healthy treats, then we're less likely to reach for those unhealthy treats. So, and it's really funny what people consider to be a healthy treat. There's like a huge variety. Like my husband does crossword puzzles. I heard of a guy who went to camping stores. He didn't even like camping. He just liked the stuff. The stuff is so cool. And so he would just like go to a camping store and look around. A friend of mine, every morning before her, it's like she gets her kids out to school, like her husband gets off, like so her whole household walks out the door and she's dressed for work and she gets back in bed fully dressed for 20 minutes and just lies there. She's like, it's the best part of my day. Some people like ironing, weirdly. I talked to a guy who did like voluntary user interface consultations. I mean, people like, I like reading children's literature. Like that's my treat. But when you have a list of your treats, then when you start feeling like, that feeling, I need it, I deserve it. After the day I've had, you can't tell me I shouldn't have blah. It's like, okay, how about this healthy treat? Try this. Oh, you love a fancy tea? Go have a fancy tea. You love to like go to the dog store and buy a new toy for your dog? Go to the dog store, buy a new toy for your dog. Like having those healthy treats gives you something to reach for. So you have that feeling of like, oh yeah, I've given myself that little bit of energy and boost that I need. Sometimes people are like, I shouldn't require anything. I should just push myself. That's not very realistic. Sometimes we need a charge.
Yeah. And it's a huge concept because we just drive ourselves so hard and we're so focused and we're like goal driven. I've got to lose this weight by this time and all this. And we're just stacking more and more on our plate. And we'll get to that conversation here in a little bit, but it's like actually giving ourselves something to recharge our batteries. Like a big part of my healthy treat is I just got an infrared sauna and like, I look forward to hitting that deal.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Or, meditating or just walking my dog, things like that. It fills me back up. So I've really been enjoying teaching this concept to people that just seem like they're just burnt out with the whole process of being healthy, and they're just grinding their willpower down to the nub pretty much. So this has been a high impact theory for us to use here.
One thing I would say, though, is that sometimes there are things that are replenishing and rejuvenating, but that aren't really treats because we don't like anticipate them with pleasure and look forward to them. Like my sister was saying to me, my sister Elizabeth was saying like, oh, yoga is my treat. And I'm like, hey, I'm your sister. Like, I know you. Yoga is not your treat. Yoga might make you feel great. You might be really happy that you're doing yoga, but it's not a treat. It's not like you see it on your calendar. You're like, ooh, boy, I can't wait for yoga. Or like, this is going to be great. Or I'm looking forward to this. Like, this is like a treat. I'm like, it's really good for you. It rejuvenates you. It's a great idea. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's not quite a treat. Now, sometimes for somebody, yoga could be a treat. I'm just saying that for my sister, because I know her, for her, yoga is not a treat. Yoga is more like, this is the kind of thing I need to make myself do. She might need a treat to get herself to do the yoga. So, because I think sometimes people who are really, really like pushing themselves start acting like, oh, if I go for a 3-mile run, that's my treat. I'm like, is it really a treat? Because it is for some people, but for some people, that's just like another item on their to-do list. Not to say that it wouldn't make them feel good and be healthy and it'd be a great idea, but is it a treat?
Yeah.
Because you need to give yourself some treats
that
are healthy.
And just let's do a quick shout out for your podcast, Happier with Gretchen Rubin, because I love the banter between you and Elizabeth back and forth. And I have so many friends that remind me of Elizabeth, just the way that she talks. Like it sounds like if she would just have like one more cup of coffee, then she's going to be good to go. Like
Yeah.
she's very dry with her humor,
Yes.
and you're like the energy ball,
Yeah.
but you guys, I love the show. So make sure you guys subscribe to Happier with Gretchen Rubin
Oh,
and her
thank you. Yeah.
sister Elizabeth. Now, I will absolutely get my butt kicked by one of my friends at my gym, one of my team members at my gym, Nurse Marcy. She is a Gretchen Rubin fanaholic. She introduced me to the four tendencies, back in the day. So she really, really, really would like you to go through the four tendencies in terms of people that are struggling with weight loss. So
With weight loss.
when we talk about the upholder, the questioner, the obliger, the rebel, somebody that is losing weight and gaining it back, if you fit that category, how should we be approaching that? And maybe even as a coach, how should I be coaching that person? And just so you guys know, the four tendencies, I want you to take this quiz. It's quiz.gretchenrubin.com. I'll put the link in the show notes. It is free and it is amazing. And that'll help you. It'll tell you which of the four tendencies you are. And I'm an upholder, like extreme. So
Me too.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to get your thoughts around weight loss struggles and the four tendencies.
So for people who haven't taken the quiz, I'll just quickly go through the four, because I think a lot of times people just know what they are from the briefest description. And then then I'll go through and talk about how this might play into weight loss. The four tendencies is a personality framework that I created that looks at people according to how they respond to expectations. So their outer expectations, like a work deadline or a request from a friend, and then their inner expectations, like I want to eat more healthfully, or I want to keep a New Year's resolution. So depending on how you meet outer and inner expectations, that's what determines your tendency. So the first is upholder. That's what you are and I am too. And upholders readily meet outer and inner expectations. So they meet the work deadline, they keep the New Year's resolution without much fuss. They want to know what other people expect from them, but their expectations for themselves are just as important. Yep. So their motto is, discipline is my freedom. Then there are questioners. Questioners question all expectations. They'll do something if they think it makes sense. So they're making everything an inner expectation. If it meets their standard, they'll do it. If it fails their standard, they will push back. They resist anything arbitrary, inefficient, unjustified. Their motto is, I'll comply if you convince me why. Then there are obligers. Obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. And I got my first insight into this tendency when a friend said, I don't understand it. When I was in high school, I was on the track team and I never missed track practice. So why can't I go running now? Well, when she had a team and a coach expecting her to show up, she had no trouble. But when she's just trying to go on her own, it's hard. Then finally, rebels. Rebels resist all expectations, outer and inner alike. They want to do what they want to do in their own way, in their own time. They can do anything they want to do, anything they choose to do. But if you ask or tell them to do something, they're very likely to resist. And typically, they don't like to tell themselves what to do. Like, they don't sign up for a 10 a.m. Saturday spin class because they're like, I don't know what I want to do on Saturday. Like, I just want to be spontaneous. Like, the fact that someone's expecting me to show up just bugs me. And their motto is, you can't make me, and neither can I. So those are the four tendencies. So if you go through and you say, okay, how would this play into eating more healthfully? So upholders do well with a program, a to-do list, putting it on the calendar. So if they are like, this is what I'm going to do, they just kind of need to make up their mind and put it in the calendar, and they can execute it pretty easily. This is the thing, like almost any program works for some people because almost any program works for upholders. So you're always going to get the upholders because once they've decided to do it, it's like, okay, that's fine. Questioners need reasons. And so if they're having trouble with something, I always say, have you really become convinced that this is the best way to do it, the most efficient way? They love to customize. Is this the right way for you? And so have you decided that this nutritionist or this plan is really the best plan or the right plan? Because if not, that may be causing you to go into analysis paralysis. And that is when questioners don't act, they don't make decisions or move forward because they don't feel confident that they have the right answer. And so a lot of times a questioner who's experiencing this, you can say, look, this is an experiment. Try eating this way. If it works for you, that's great. If it doesn't work for you, that's still an experiment that teaches you something about yourself. Then you can go on and try something different. But this will teach you more. You'll be able to make a better decision going forward. And many times, any decision is better than no decision. It's don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And the healthy eating habits that you do now are far more effective than the healthy habits that you never start, because you haven't decided if they're the perfect ones. So get started. Then obligers. So obligers readily meet outer expectations, but they struggle to meet inner expectations. And sometimes obligers, they don't like this. They want to just work on their motivation. They want to put themselves first. Like, get outer accountability. That is simple and easy, and that is what works for obligers. So if you want to eat healthfully, it's like work with a nutritionist, join an accountability group, think of your duty to be a role model for other people by modeling healthy habits, think of your duty to your future self. That works for some obligers. Like, if I get to the end of 2019 and nothing's changed in my life, future Gretchen is going to be so disappointed. That doesn't work for all. Obligers are very different in what kind of outer accountability works for them. Some can be accountable to the future self, some can't. For some obligers, money is very persuasive. Like, if I pay to join this exercise program, I'm not going to waste my money. Of course I'm going to follow it. Some obligers, they feel like paying almost lets them off the hook. So you have to know, if you're an obliger or you're dealing with an obliger, you may have to experiment with a few types of accountability to see what works for this particular person. And often sweethearts don't make good accountability partners. I'll throw that out there, because it's like, you're so close to me, I'm going to ignore you just the way I would ignore me. So if the spouse is like, if you're like, I'm really trying to help my spouse eat healthfully, but they just ignore me even though they're an obliger, it's like, yeah, because sweethearts don't make good accountability partners usually. And then finally, rebels. Now, rebels are kind of tricky and they're often frustrated themselves because they can't tell themselves what to do. So what do you do if you're a rebel and you want to quit sugar, but the minute you decide to quit sugar, you're like, no one can tell me what to do, including me. Off I go to eat sugar. What do you do as a rebel? One thing is you can challenge yourself. People think I can't eat this way. Watch me. I'll show you. Or, you think I can't do this for a year? I'm going to do it 100% for 2 years. Sometimes they like a challenge like that. But also rebels put a very, very high value on their identity. So I'm not eating this way because the doctor told me to. I'm not eating this way because my spouse tells me to. I'm not doing this because I said I would. I'm doing that because this is what I want. I want an active, healthy body. I want to feel free. I want to feel good when I move around. I want to be able to travel easily. I want to feel good in an airplane seat. My knees are bothering me. I want to be pain-free. I want to go bounding up the steps of the Metropolitan Museum. This is what I want. I don't want to be chained by processed food. I don't want to get addicted to sugar. I want to be free. I want to make my choices. Nobody tells me what to do. I want the life that's right for me. I want an athletic, energetic, healthy body. So I do the things that a person does who wants to have an athletic, energetic, healthy, pain-free body. That's what I want. That's what I'm going to get. So for a rebel, that works. That is what works. Whereas so the accountability might be very counterproductive for a rebel, right, but that's exactly what the obliger needs. So you really have to know yourself or other people to know, how do you frame something in a way that's really going to resonate with them?
Do you notice any of the tendencies struggling with their health more than the other? I feel like out of the people that I talk to a lot, the obliger seems to be that person that will always say yes to people at work and all these outer expectations. And then maybe they've lost weight and gained it back. And then they start thinking, well, I should be able to do this on my own by now because that's already happened. But just by nature, that's not their jam. So they don't ask for accountability. They don't ask for that support. So any thoughts there?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, obliger is the largest tendency for both men and women. It's the largest tendency. So when you say what do you see in the world? It's like whatever obligers experience feels like the biggest thing.
Okay.
So you're right. They do experience it just because there's more of them.
Okay.
It is interesting. Many people sort of feel like they should graduate out of accountability. Like, maybe I need accountability at the beginning, but then I should not have to.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I'm going to use this program where I weigh in every week and somebody checks on me and I have a coach. But then at a certain point, I should be able to graduate out of. Why should I pay for this? I can do it on my own. For obligers, they need that structure of outer accountability, I think, forever. And that's fine. People feel like somehow that's weak or embarrassing. I'm like, who cares? This is the truth of a large group of people. Some of the most accomplished people in the world are obligers. Oprah Winfrey, Andre Agassi, Daenerys Targaryen, Jon Snow. I mean, these people are obligers. They are the rock of the world. They partner up the best with the other tendencies. Huge strength in the obliger tendency. But the thing is, it's like, but if something's working for you, if accountability is working for you, don't feel like this is sort of like you're the rocket and then, or like you're the training wheels are coming off the bike. This is part of the bike for you. Just keep it there. And what you see for obligers who are really successful is they have incorporated accountability seamlessly into every area of their life, so they have the life they want. They want to read more, they join a book group. Easy peasy. Like and people want to like change themselves. I'm like, don't change yourself, change your circumstances. You're fine the way you are. Whatever you're experiencing, many people feel the same way. Rebels say, why can't I do a to-do list? I'm like, lots of rebels can't use to-do lists. That's just like a rebel thing. Just figure out another solution. Like, to-do lists are not the only way to get something done. Find a way that works for you. And the same thing with obligers, because you're right, because obligers readily meet outer expectations but struggle to meet inner expectations. If they don't have outer accountability around something like a behavior that's an inner expectation, it's going to get ignored. Not because they're putting other people first, not because they don't have self-esteem, not because they are not good at self-care. It's because they're good at meeting outer expectations, but not good at meeting inner expectations. So a lot of times there's a lot of kind of words around what's going on and explanations for it, which I'm like, I don't think it's that. I think it's just you need outer accountability. So I'm like, take this simple, easy solution, plug in the outer accountability, and you'll be fine. If that's an obliger, that's what's going to work for you.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the clarity that the quiz brings, is you find out which tendency fits best with you and how you're living your life. And then you can take that pressure off of, well, why am I not fitting into these expectations that I've put upon myself and all this pressure? And we can just work in our own groove that works for us. And so if you need external accountability forever, if that's how we get healthy and live an extra 50 years, winning, hashtag winning. So,
yeah. It's like the workplace. They don't say like, oh, you've had deadlines for 2 years. Now we're going to work without deadlines. They're like, people need deadlines, right? It's like, we're going to have deadlines. Yeah. It's just, absolutely. It's not something that needs to change. And also the thing is, when you understand how other people are different, you can realize like why they might be behaving in a way that doesn't make sense to you. So you and I are both upholders. And if you're like me, a thought that often might cross your mind, I thought this before I understood the 4 tendencies, was something like, I don't want to be your babysitter. You do your work in your own way. I'll do my work in my own way. That's fine. Well, that's not very good for obligers, because they're like, what's going on here? Like, when do you want this done? What are you expecting from me? Like, is this real? Because you just like lobbed this into the air. Like, what is that? And now it's like, I would really like to have it. It would really be helpful to have it by Friday. If Friday doesn't work, let me know. Let's give deadlines, let's give accountability. And if it's a questioner, you have to be like, this is why I'm asking you to do this. This is why I'm asking for to have it by Friday, because they need reasons. And the rebel, I'm like, if this works for you and it's, whenever you have the time and the inclination, I think it would be really helpful for you and for me if XYZ got done. It's like, but it's up to you.
Yeah. I think that if any of my team members are listening in, and they should be, they're probably laughing hilariously after what you just said, where like I toss ideas out there. I'm like, all right, everybody hold on tight. This is the direction we're charging next.
Yes.
And yes, so that's helpful to be challenged to think in their perspective with their tendency. That's super important. All right. I am really, really excited to dive into your new book, because a couple of years ago, I started experimenting with a minimalist lifestyle, and I started diving down the whole declutterization and all that, where it's a huge part of who I am now, and it's been totally freeing. So in your latest book, Outer Order, Inner Calm, it's basically a focus on decluttering strategies, right?
Yeah.
So first thing I want to get is a comparison definition of how is decluttering different from minimalism. And you talk about it in the book, and I know it's an important distinction that you make in the book.
Yeah, that's a great starting point. So minimalism, I mean, people just have different views about what minimalism is, but I think the general kind of lay feeling is like minimalism is when you really cut back to like the very bare essentials. So like you have a capsule wardrobe, which is only the things that you absolutely need. You kind of get rid of anything that's that's extra or kind of anything that's just additional to what you really need. And the idea is that from that comes freedom and less decision making, and your house is cleaner and all that. Now, my own view is that nobody wants clutter, because clutter, in my view, is something where it's like, you don't need it, you don't use it, you don't love it. That's what my test is. Do you need it? Do you use it? If this is like a cord, I don't know what this cord even goes to. Why is this thing on my shelf? Here's a bread maker. We haven't made bread in 5 years. Like, we don't need it, use it, love it. Why is it there? That is clutter. But it's true, in my observation, that some people are simplicity lovers and some people are abundance lovers. So simplicity lovers are the people for whom minimalism is very attractive. And I'm a simplicity lover, and I like bare counters and a lot of empty space on the shelves. And I don't like a lot going on. And I like silence. And I like, like one little rosebud in one little vase. That's simplicity lovers. But then there are abundance lovers, and abundance lovers love profusion and choice and collections and a lot of stuff going on and a lot of stuff on the coffee table and stuff on the corkboard. And they like piles with unexpected juxtapositions. It's not clutter, because it's like these things are mindfully chosen, they're arranged, they're exactly where they're supposed to be. It's not that I don't need them, use them, or love them. I just like to have them around. I love them. They're beautiful. I want them. And the fact is, no one's right, no one's wrong. These are just preferences for like how we like to have our environments. The problem comes when one person decides, I'm right, you're wrong. I'm your boss, and so I say, a cluttered desk means a cluttered mind. In this office, we have a clean desk policy. Well, that might work very well for me because I'm a simplicity lover. But for someone who's an abundance lover, that might not be the environment in which they do their best work. Now, and so I think the thing about minimalism is it's sort of suggesting everybody would be happier with less, and if they got rid of everything except the most essential. I don't think that's the common experience of mankind. Some people like to have more stuff, or sometimes people are mixed, like books. I have shelves upon shelves upon shelves upon shelves of books. And I've gone through them, and I've taken out lots of books that I don't need, use, or love, and I've given away truckloads of books. But any common person who walked in would say, oh my gosh, Gretchen, you have a lot of books in here, but I love them and I use them and I want them. And even just seeing them makes me happy. Should I get rid of all but 2 shelves? No, that's not right for me. Might be right for someone else. That's not right for me. And so I think it really is to this thing. What is the environment in which you thrive? And what for you are the things you don't need, use, and love, and get rid of those things? Well, one person might be left with 20 items in the closet. One might have 50 items in the closet, and those decisions might be clutter-free for each of them.
Yeah, one of my favorite phrases that I've come up with in my deep dive into tidying and decluttering and minimalism is that we should be trying to maximize the things that we get the most benefit from and minimize the things that distract us from those things. So
absolutely, that's great advice.
Maximize them. If you have something else that you do that takes away from that love of books, then try to minimize that. So one of my big areas that I have decluttered in is with my wardrobe. I pride myself in, I keep it below 80 items total. Socks count as 2. So at any point in time, I'm wearing about 10% of my total wardrobe, which it just makes me feel nice. The decisions and, the clothes I have, I really enjoy, and they're like, I keep them nice, and I'll spend a little extra money. So that makes me really, really happy. I'm interested in where your like declutterization sweet spots are. Like, what's the 1 or 2 areas of your life that you're like, this really makes me feel good to keep it clutter free?
Ooh, probably my office, because I have a very small, I'm sitting in my office right now. You can see my dog back there.
Yes.
Barnaby. I have, this is kind of my brain externalized. And so I do keep it very clutter free. And like, I know everything that's here and where everything is. And that's very important for me. Now, but here's if I could tip the screen, I would show you, there are these blank books that I made as a child, which I would put in quotations for I've been collecting quotations since I was like 8 years old. My old historical books of quotations. Do I look at them very often? No. Do I need them? No. Are they precious to me as like part of my identity? Absolutely. So they are right there above my head. I can see them at any time. And that's important to me because they are very important. They are how I hold on to my past self in a kind of physical way. They're very important to me. But they're nicely put away, and there's a lot of empty space around them. Everything's not jam-packed. And I know where everything is. It's like, do I need I need some extra staples. Do I have extra staples? Well, I will look in the place where the extra staples would be if they were there, and they're there, or no, they're not. I need to buy more. So I really feel like in my office, I have to have that feel. I always think of it as like a surgeon feeling, where like I can put out my hand and the tool is there exactly where I expect. So for me, my office is very, and I also have sole control of my office. In some parts of your house, like there's a lot of people in and out with a lot of people's stuff kind of shuffled together. That's harder to maintain exactly the level of control that you want. But in my office, people sometimes come in here to print stuff out, but they know better than to move any of my stuff around.
So what about those shared spaces? Like, for example, I'm another one of my areas that I really like to maintain order is with our dishes. Like, I'm very specific about, like, I like to wash the dishes. I like to put them away so they're nice and neat. I like to have some open space there. And I have conversations with my wife, who's very supportive, but maybe she will have, feed our kids spaghetti, and there's spaghetti all over the dish, and will throw it in the dishwasher, and it just like it. I'm like, oh my God, you've committed the worst sin ever. So what about those shared space conversations when you would like to declutter, but it's not that important to somebody else that's in the family circle?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned the dishwasher, because many people feel like there is a right way to wash the dishwasher, and they feel very committed to that. So if you're getting into an argument, there's actually an objective answer to that. So I would encourage you both to do your research and sort of come up with what matters with the dishwasher. How do we do this? Because if one person's saying my way's right, it's like, well, is your way right? Because that is actually an objective fact.
Right.
Now, but then there's preferences, which is like, I prefer to have everything put away right away, and you don't really care. A lot of times it's like, well, that's your preference. And just because something's important to us doesn't mean that it's necessarily important to someone else. And you kind of have to decide how to manage that. And I write a lot. I've written a lot on my site about shared work, the problem of shared work. And one of the problems of shared work is that people tend to overestimate their contribution. That's called unconscious overclaiming. And so, like in a couple, it would add up to 134% because both people feel like they're giving more. And you tend to do things that you value. So if you really value everything being neat and put away, then you're like, I do this, and this is a really high value. Like, you need to really understand what I'm contributing. But if somebody is like my sister, who's like clutter blind, they're like, well, knock yourself out. But like, don't expect me to get all excited about it, because if you want to leave everything the way it is, like, that's fine with me. Again, that's a preference. And so no one's right, no one's wrong. How do you achieve the balance? And so part of it is saying, this is my preference. I want to do this. I'm going to do this my way. I would really like it if you would cooperate, but maybe you're not going to ever care as much as I do, but maybe there's other places where you're going to care more. But also, like you said, how you like to have a lot of space on the shelf and everything. I do think that one way, kind of, if you say there's neat ones and less neat ones, one thing that the neat one can do is to really take the lead on clearing out, like, let's say you have plastic containers. Every time you open up the cabinet, like, plastic containers are just like raining down on your head. We've already all had that. Go through as the neat one. Like, the messy one is never going to take the initiative on this, right? They don't care. But it's the neat one. You can say, like, okay, let me get them all out, put them on the kitchen table, match them with their lids. Okay, this one doesn't have a lid. This one is like so stained and gross, no one's ever going to use that again. This one is like warped out of shape. It looks like something weird happened to it. Like, I don't want to use that. I'm going to get them all organized and put them on the shelf. And now it's tidier and it's easier to maintain, even for a messy person, because it's like there's more room to put things away. It's easier to find what you're looking for, so you're not like scrabbling around and messing everything up. So I think if you are the neat one, it sounds like you've done this, like taking steps to make it easier to maintain an environment. If you can't jam your coat, if it takes enormous strength to jam your coat into a coat closet, you're going to throw it over a chair. If somebody goes through and gets rid of a third of the coats, and now you could just quickly hang up your coat, or even better, put a hook in the closet, so now you just put it on a hook, then it's a lot easier to do that. So I think sometimes we can create an environment where it's easier for people who are like less interested, makes it easier for them to kind of live up to more outer order.
Do you see, like, I love this book just because of what you're teaching, all the principles. Do you see any of these principles of decluttering our lives and our homes spilling over into like bigger decisions of kind of like, I use the filter of more versus enough, like when I'm taking on like a new project. So if you have a new business opportunity in front of you, thinking like, okay, do I need to make more money, or what's the value I'm going to get out of this? Or do I have enough in that category where I'm satisfied? And what's the trade-off? Because if I spend time doing this, it takes time away from something else. Do you see that carryover happening at all?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that drew me to this subject, because I'm like, why does this matter so much to people? Like, why does it feel like cleaning your kitchen makes it easier to eat healthfully? But over and over, people say that, or like, I finally felt like I could finish my PhD because I cleaned out my files. Like, there is this weird connection about getting control of your stuff, and then kind of a sense of possibility and a sense of self-mastery. One way this comes up in a weird way, and I wrote a whole blog post about why clearing clutter can help you lose weight if you want to, is that there's kind of, and I have to say this is very much my perspective. So I'm very focused on self-mastery. This is something that is really interesting to me and feels very desirable to me, self-mastery. And just imagine yourself, you're walking into a kitchen and the lights are off. And so you turn on the lights and there's nothing on the counters, the table's wiped down, there's no dishes in the sink, all the food is put away. You open up the fridge, everything's covered up, everything's put on its shelf nicely. Like to get to the potato chips, you have to reach on the very high shelf in the cabinet. It's all closed up and it's sealed with like a tight binder clip. Like, does that make it easier for you not to do night snacking? Anybody brush your teeth? Does that make it easier for you not to have night snacking? Or you walk into the kitchen, the lights are on, there's open bags of chips. Oh, nobody put away the brownies that were baked earlier today. There's still a pan of lasagna out. No one's put it in the fridge yet. There's dishes in the sink. Like, you're walking around, the cabinet's open. You say, "Oh man, I forgot we bought those cookies yesterday." You're just walking in. It's like the outer order gives you more inner order, because it's like it's putting things away. It's making things feel finished and closed off. And it doesn't let you do that kind of like, oh, I'll just have a taste. I'll just have a few, just one handful. I'm walking by. I don't even consciously realize that I've taken a handful because it just was so easy. I've got other things on my mind. I just don't even realize I'm standing next to the sink eating out of the container.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times creating outer order kind of gives you a greater sense of like knowing what you're doing and feeling in control of what you're doing. Because a lot of times we don't really feel like we're in control of ourselves. We don't feel like we're keeping our promises to ourselves. And that's a very bad feeling. We want to know that we can keep our promises to ourselves. And a lot of times our environment can really help us to do that, cue us to do that, or it can make it harder for us to do that. So we want to be very conscious of that.
Yeah. And you're a great namer of things and namer of books. And I feel like this book, Outer Order, Inner Calm, that title just really rings with me. So it's very Zen, and I feel like it describes exactly what you're trying to help people accomplish.
Well, and it's funny that you say that, because like I have all these secrets of adulthood, which is sort of the things I've learned with time and experience. Like the days are long, but the years are short, or turning things off and on often fixes a glitch. And one of the things that clearly resonated the most with people is, so I would say, for most people, outer order contributes to inner calm. And people would be like, "Oh my gosh, that's so true." And I realized, wow, I really feel this way, but so do other people. And then, like you say, sometimes titles of books come right away.
Yep.
Sometimes they bite you. This one, I was like, outer order, inner calm. Like I just knew it. So I'm glad to hear that it strikes a chord with you, because it was like clear from the minute I started what the title of this book was.
I think that's obvious. Yeah, you hit a home run with that one. Now, I could sit here and talk to you for hours upon hours. I know that we're limited with our time. I want to make sure people can get connected with you. So obviously, GretchenRubin.com, the quiz, I'm going to put the link. I'm going to force every single person that listens to this. I will come knocking on your door if you don't fill out the quiz, because it's that good. Plug into Gretchen stuff. Happier with Gretchen Rubin. Where are you hanging out on social media these days? Where's your favorite social media?
Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I like all of them, all under the name of Gretchen Rubin, Rubin. And I love to connect with people and hear insights and observations and questions. So hit me up online any way you like.
Awesome. Now, I like to leave our listeners with a little bit of momentum, a little bit of homework. And I'm actually going to take advantage personally with this one. Normally, it's all about them, but I've got a question that'll benefit me as well. Now, so when you used to be in the legal profession, right? I mean, you had a set career going with that, and you made a big leap of just totally changing directions, kind of following your heart. I'm in a position like that now. I mentioned that I owned a gym. I've done that for several years now. And I feel like I'm ready to make that big, scary change in this online space. I'm 200 plus episodes of my podcast. We're developing a lot of connections. I'm I want to take that scary leap of following my heart. I know there's a lot of listeners that may, want to do a career change or change a relationship or do something kind of big and scary like that, that there's not a real safety net built in for them. So any advice for people that are approaching kind of the edge of that diving board, getting ready to jump off?
Well, I mean, the one piece of advice I would say is like exactly what you've done is sometimes people are like, I can stay in my boring job or I can quit my job and then go write the great American novel. And it's like, that's kind of a false choice because maybe you could write in your free time or, maybe you could write articles first. And it sounds like you've done a lot of things to transition yourself and sort of test it out. Am I interested in this? Is this the kind of thing I like? So I think one thing is to start transitioning, doing the transition work while you're still in your first career or before you, rather than think one is going to come to 100% end before you start the next one, because you may have a fantasy about what it's like and it's not really like that. And you'll also feel more free if you don't have all your eggs in one basket. I mean, there's a great podcast called Side Hustle School with Chris Guillebeau, and he talks a lot about how you can make transitions in a way that is not risking everything, but is still helping you move very concretely and realistically towards a goal. And so I think that's the thing, is not to say it's this or that, but to say, how can I have this and that for a while, and then maybe I just like that. And so this, I will stop doing this, but for a while, maybe I'll do this and that, because I want to learn, I want to experiment, and I want to do that in a way that is not so risky that I'm going to scare myself to death and then maybe never even try.
Awesome. Gretchen Rubin, I appreciate you so much. This has been something I've looked forward to for a long time. This means a lot to me that you said yes to spend some time with me and our audience here today. So thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you. It was so fun to talk to you. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Now you've been inspired. It's time to take that inspiration and put it into action. I want you to select one thing, one golden tip that you've got from our conversation here today, and let's implement in the next 24 hours. Because remember, you guys are worth it. I want you to get out there and own it. Every meal, every workout, every day. I will see you on the next episode. Well, hey, thanks for hanging out for the after party. What a great episode, man. Gretchen rocked it. I love her info. I love the style that she just kind of presents her information and delivers high value. And I hope that you got a lot out of that one. Now, as we talked about the 4 tendencies, if you guys especially resonated with being an obliger, all right, that person that really struggles with, internal expectations. You can handle at work when somebody gives you a checklist, you can knock that out, that those external expectations and motivation, no problem. But when it comes to you and when it comes to taking care of you and filling up your cup first, if you struggle with that, then I want you to seriously consider 3 different ways that you can plug into my stuff for free. Because she talked about, obligers need accountability. They need that external motivation to take place. They really struggle with going out there and being like, okay, I got myself into this mess. Now I'm going to get myself out of this mess. If you're an upholder, maybe that's a reality. But if you fit in that obliger category, then the first step, I want you to download my battle plan workbook. Go to millionpoundmission.com, get the workbook. Then step number 2, sign up for a free 15-minute coaching session with me. That way I can help you implement that workbook, because you probably won't make time to do the workbook if you don't have me saying, hey, you're going to do this, and then email it to me so I can check in and hold you accountable. And then the third step is start your free 10-day trial inside of our Transformation Reboot community. That way you have a supportive community and additional external accountability built in. So if you are an obliger, calling all obligers, I want you to go through those 3 steps. Just go to millionpoundmission.com, do step 1, step 2, step 3, and let's rock that transformation. All right. I hope you, again, enjoy this episode. And if you have any feedback, hit me up on Instagram. Send me a DM at Million Pound Mission. We'll see you next time.